So, welcome. I just needed to be able to yap more about my feelings on politics. So, I'm starting off very first video of a channel that I'm going to call Ambivalent American just because I think when it comes to America there are a lot of things that I'm very excited to know about, things I could look forward to, but on the other end, everything that is going on right now and our rejection of science, rejection of history, just makes me question like how dumb we are sometimes, right? Professionally, I teach a history class. I've been doing that for since 2017, so this will be 9 years coming up at this point, I think. And I've been a U.S. history teacher. History's always been the thing that I like doing. In fact, in college, it was the only thing that saved my GPA. I did not finish college with a good GPA because I tried topics that I was not fully interested in. It's always been history to me. It's always been kind of like politics. So, this is my very first one. I am going to stream this on Twitch, I guess, and then put it up on YouTube because I'm experimenting to see what happens. So, we are going over tariffs. Basically, just this idea that Donald Trump's had since the 80s that tariffs are the way to fix the American economy. It's the way to bring back manufacturing. It's the way to change what he thinks is the trajectory of the United States right now. And the main thing is, I think they wanted it to replace income taxes as well. Just to try and get rid of as many taxes as possible because he's a part of this like allegiance of people who just have the dumbest ideas possible and forget that there's been literally hundreds of years of human behavior and history and things that we've recognized, the trends that occur when you try to just cheat the system continually, right? You're gonna muck up every single system that you create. So I'm reading something today called America's Own Goal. Who pays the tariffs? Now, if I look at it correctly, so there's a Supreme Court case about tariffs, right? I think it's, there we go. Learning Resources v. Trump, right? So let me take that down. This is the case in which when we go over it, this will allow us to figure out kind of what's going on. Now, instead of arguing this right now when Donald Trump is threatening to put an additional 10% tariffs on like 8 European countries, including which are the majority of our NATO allies, they're arguing the other stuff on the docket, right? I don't know what else they were doing. So, last update on this blog coverage was that there was no opinion. So I don't know enough about this process to know when it is coming up. Maybe if we can check the Supreme Court schedule. Let's see. What's it called? Learning Resources. I don't know. Well, that's just unfortunate. I'm giving up there. I have something to read. So, America's Own Goal. Who pays the tariffs? In 2025, U.S. tariffs are an own goal. This is just their overview. American importers and consumers bear nearly the entire cost. Foreign exporters absorb only 4% of the tariff burden. The remaining 96% is passed through to U.S. buyers. Using shipment-level data covering over 25 million transactions, valued at nearly $4 trillion, we find near-complete pass-through of tariffs to U.S. import prices. Damn. U.S. customs revenue surged by approximately $200 billion in 2025, a tax paid almost entirely by Americans. Event studies around discrete tariff shocks on Brazil 50% and India 25 to 50% confirm export prices did not decline, trade volumes collapsed instead. So every single idea that these guys come up with is now a long-term solution to any of the problems that they talk about. Literally, the whole point is to make things cheaper for Americans, and it literally did none of that. It just decreased the amount of stuff that we traded. I think one example of that is soybeans in China. I think, there we go, from Forbes, but I don't have the membership. Let's see. I'm dumb. All right, so I guess I can just go off this because I'm not gonna get that Forbes subscription yet. So China purchased no soybeans for an unprecedented 6th straight month. Instead, all of that went to Argentina and Brazil. I think even China had like a $1.2 trillion trade surplus going on. So all of these actions that were meant to, I guess, cripple the Chinese economy, bring them to the negotiating table, because they're just one-trick ponies, and Donald Trump is a one-trick pony. Nothing other than tariffs, and it didn't even do anything. In fact, it actually harmed more Americans than any benefit it actually gave, which is absolute crazy to me. That's crazy. All right, we got a little German here. I'm not reading that. I'm not doing, actually, it's just the same thing in German. I'm stupid. So we got our artists, Julian Hinz, Aaron Lohmann, Hendrik Mahlkow, and Anna Vorwig. God, I butchered those names. So, America's own goal. Who pays the tariffs? On April 2nd, 2025, the U.S. administration announced steep sweeping import duties, the Liberation Day tariffs. So, let me take that. April 2nd, 2025. I'm smart. I like to take notes, it helps me. And Liberation Day tariffs were when he just made an announcement like we were at like a game show. Said, this is your tariff rate, this is your tariff rate. And then he basically did like an AI calculation, I think, and didn't account for like any kind of smart economic sense to develop like a reason why those tariffs would be at those specific levels, right? I think even he tariffed like an uninhabited island with penguins on it. Yeah. So, these measures represented one of the broadest tariff shocks in U.S. history. Every day is a new day. The policy included a baseline 10% on almost all imports, higher country-specific rates for many trading partners, and additional sector-specific tariffs on autos, steel, and aluminum. For China, which retaliated, tariff rates at some point exceeded 100%. The central question of this policy brief is, who bears the cost of these tariffs? Who pays the tariffs? This is the main question. Let me move this to the center. Because we are making a small report. So, I think this is an idea from the 80s for Trump. Because I think he was talking about them in the 1980s. There we go. So, we're going to create a little table so that we can actually build that up. Trump. Trump's obsession with tariffs. All right. was written. That's May 6th. 2019. Maybe we need to pause that.
Despite the uneven consequences, President Trump was all in on the tariff strategy. It's a strategy he's been talking about for years, as far back as the late 1980s.
Oh my God,
when he first tested the possibility of becoming president.
Our guest, the famed developer Donald Trump of New York.
Back then, Trump's target was Japan and its trade practices.
The fact is that you don't have free trade. We think of it as free trade, but you right now don't have free trade. And I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. This is a great country.
He has the same exact language. Everything's a ripoff unless he's the one who's participated in it. But it's just absolutely funny. He's a one-trick pony. And this is the 80s. Sorry, this is almost... Oh my God, this is almost like 50 years ago. This man has had two thoughts his entire life.
He believed from the beginning that there's really nothing worse than being laughed at.
They laugh at us. Behind our backs, they laugh at us because of...
And that's a funny point, just about how he believes people perceive him. He wants to be the big, strong man. He can never be the butt of a joke, which is probably why, like, the only reason why our reality got shifted into having him be president is because Barack Obama made fun of him and said that he would never be president, and everyone laughed at him. And I know Donald Trump had gotten so pissed at that it was like maybe just out of spite, but also they say for like ratings for The Apprentice, and then he like accidentally latched on to what people wanted to see from a politician who was a Republican. But that is absolutely... Hold on. That's my fiance in the background. Yes. Huh?
Taxes was feeling unwelcome.
I have no clue what you're talking about. I started the stream thing. So let's see. So we're just getting distracted.
It is wonderful to be here at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Look at that.
What a week.
Now, I think when it comes to Obama, like, I'm in the camp that he represented how a politician should consider being the president of the United States. But, like, let's not forget, like, it's not like it's a innocent job. Like, you have to do some of the most egregious and bastardized things that people could ever imagine to, like, succeed as president of the United States. Like, this man inherited a war that consisted of them paying, like the Taliban off in certain locations and bombing people and deposing leaders like Muammar Gaddafi, and then literally causing all the issues that's in Libya. Where, like, right now, Libya still has like an open slave market where you can literally get prices on like how much people cost. All right. I'm just getting all... And I know I'm getting really distracted from the original point about tariffs, but it's just like an interesting through line. So in 2017, the shocking revelation of the slave market operating in Libya, where individuals were auctioned for as little as $400, spread widespread condemnation. Footage depicting the dehumanizing treatment of these individuals, showing their inability to speak or resist, mirrored the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. This horrific situation, reminiscent of the harrowing depictions in the novel Roots, highlight the vulnerability of individuals in the face of systemic injustice and the absence of legal protections. So this story is from 2025. And as it keeps on going down, so the fall of Muammar Gaddafi's regime in 2021 plunged Libya into a state of political instability, creating fertile ground for human trafficking and forced labor to thrive. The plight of enslaved individuals in Libya represents not only a profound violation of human rights, but also a critical challenge for global humanitarian efforts. Addressing modern slavery in Libya is crucial for restoring dignity and justice to thousands of victims, as well as reinforcing international human rights standards. Damn. They aim to achieve a better life in Europe by traversing Libyan territory. According to the IOM, between 700,000 and 1 million African immigrants resided in Libya in 2017, with many of them willing to risk their lives by ensuring their well-being and savings to human traffickers. These human traffickers assist them in crossing Libyan land in the Mediterranean Sea in rubber boats, often disregarding the dangers of the perilous journey. It's like, this is just going to the fact that the Obama administration, they were guilty, I think, of some of the same like disqualifications that people have into the after. Like, what happens if we do exactly what we want to do? Are we gonna have the political will to sustain our interest in this, right? And this is an example. We got rid of Muammar Gaddafi, and without going into any of the other background information, maybe the necessities, what were they concerned about, what were they trying to do, the fact that you have a situation in which you have 1 million people who want to be smuggled out of Africa and into Europe, that's just a failure to consider what is necessary for the future, right? So, like, when I talk about Obama, he's not, I don't consider him the god of black votes. I do consider him better than Donald Trump, though.
As some of you heard, the state of Hawaii released my official long-form birth certificate. Hopefully, this puts all doubts to rest. But just in case there are any lingering questions, tonight, I'm prepared to go a step further. Tonight, for the first time, I am releasing my official birth video.
There he goes.
Now, I warn you, no one has seen this footage in 50 years.
I don't
Not
know what
even
you're
me.
saying.
But let's take a look.
This is absolutely crazy. The half Kenyan, half white American dude's birth video is the opening scene from The Lion King.
Oh well. Back to square one.
You know, I watched Mean Girls the other day.
I want to make clear to the
And
Fox
it was very
News
interesting
table,
what they let
that was
those
a
girls
joke.
say in Vietnamese, whenever the hell that movie came out.
That was not my real birth video. That was a children's cartoon. Call Disney if you don't believe me. They have the original long-form version. There's a vicious rumor floating around that I think could really hurt Mitt Romney. I heard he passed universal health care when he was governor of Massachusetts. Someone should get to the bottom of that. And I know just the guy to do it, Donald Trump.
This is the
He's here
moment.
tonight.
This is when he changed world history. God damn you, Obama.
Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter, like Did we fake the moon
steaming.
landing? What really
This
happened
is the
in
moment
Roswell?
that really destroyed America.
And where are Biggie and Tupac?
He had that black man making fun of him in front of that row of white people, and he said, out of spite, I will destroy the entire world.
All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience.
Oh my God. This is
For
so
example,
crazy. They
no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, at the steakhouse,
Just
the men's
considering.
cooking team
So just considering the history of the United States since 2011, the last 15 years have been absolutely, well, we're not 15 years yet, but the last 14 and a half years have been absolutely crazy. And this is that nexus event. This is when every origin point, right? This is when the United States changed forever. This is when everything went downhill and we lost decades of soft power. And now we're putting $1.5 trillion into our military, and we're slowly phasing out all resources and benefits for the American citizens. We don't care if they're safe anymore. It's just because Obama made fun of an insecure white man at a cringy ass dinner for snobby, like, Washington people.
did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
This is what happened. All of those white people laughing. All of them just cackling and enjoying that. Destroyed America forever.
Well handled, sir. Well handled.
This is...
Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there.
Oh, it's like they tell these jokes, and it's just reality is stranger than fiction. Because there's no way that they were like, he's gonna build on top of the White House when he's literally already doing that. And he's got gold, everything. That, oh my, I wonder who that is. We'll see who John Boehner, who's this supposed to be? Maybe Bill Clinton? I don't know though. But that's absolutely crazy because he is literally trying to retransform the White House and like build on top of it. I think not only the West Wing for the ballroom, but also I think he has plans to demolish the East Wing as well. Let's see. Trump. Maybe I'm doing it in disinformation. So, Trump wants to add the West Wing to his list of construction projects. President Trump is on a remodeling and construction spree. In addition to the White House ballroom project, Trump wants to add a second story to the West Wing colonnade. Let's see, what is a colonnade? And I'm super off topic, but I don't really. A colonnade is a long row of regularly shaped columns supporting a roof or in entablature, common in architecture for created covered walkways, porticos, peristyles, or decorative edges for buildings. It can also refer to a line of trees. So, colonnade. Okay. So, okay. I understand now what a colonnade is. Learn something new every day. So we see President Trump is on a remodeling spree, and it's not just White House ballroom project. There was an interesting video where someone said that it wasn't actually a ballroom, that it's not only is it a ballroom, but it's also an AI data center, so that Oracle can like institute their own version of the Chinese social credit I can hear you. And like they're making like different adjustments for like changing the amount of power that goes through there, and also literally fortifying it in the same ways in which other countries who are connected with Oracle and why am I Palantir, right, have been doing. Let's see. After last week's presentation by Ballroom Project architect Shalom Barnes to the National Capital Planning Commission, it all makes more sense. The president's massive planned ballroom is designed to connect to the White House East Room via a 2-story colonnade, but the West Wing colonnade on the other side is currently only a single story. Barnes said, architecturally, it would be best if the two sides of the residence were in balance. The White House is therefore considering the idea of a modest 1-story addition to the West Wing colonnade, which would serve to restore a sense of symmetry around the original central pavilion. In an interview with the New York Times, Trump said he was calling it the Upper West Wing, and it could hold office space for presidential aides or perhaps the First Lady. He told the Times it was currently being designed, and if he liked what he saw, he would move forward. Barnes downplayed the current state of planning during his presentation to the commission. We have not looked at that at all yet, but hope to do so in the future. One complicating factor, though, is that it's housed underneath the portion of the West Wing where Trump is talking about adding a second floor. The James S. Brady press briefing room and workspace used by hundreds of journalists in the White House press corps. A major renovation like that could cause significant disruption. Oh, they're definitely going to do that then, right? They get to displace all of the reporters and have further control about where they have them. No, and where they're allowed to do work. All right, so let's finish this real quick. Like, considering the fact that we're building multiple stories above and below in these locations. Where was the joke, though, that changed the world?
All right, everybody.
Oh, comments are turned off.
My buddy, our outstanding ambassador,
Let's see.
John Huntsman, is with us. Now, there's something you might not know about John.
I'm done with that. So that's what did us in. Obama making fun of Trump. So we're back onto it. Let's see.
Of our own stupidity.
And he came to see the Japanese as laughing at the United States, at taking advantage of the United States.
It's very interesting about Donald Trump and how the idea of people laughing, right? It's this idea that never stops going away. He's afraid of being laughed at. He's like, he can't get rid of that. He says that so much. They're laughing at us. They're laughing at us. They're laughing at us. Now, I know you can't like diagnose people, but it's just like, it's super evident that this man is highly insecure. He can't handle the fact that people could be making fun of him, right? And it bruises him so much. I might have to look at what I think it's his niece, Mary Trump, says. But even in the 80s, this man's been afraid of being laughed at for damn near, I'm just going to go from 1980. Right, 46 years that this man's been afraid to be laughed at, and he's 79 years old.
By stealing the jobs, by dumping product here.
We let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible.
After Japan's economy cratered, Trump shifted his ire to a rising economic power, China.
They are ripping us like we've never been ripped before. If you look at Japan.
Now, the man's been consistent, I guess.
If you look at China, where we lose $100 billion a year with China.
He's been saying the same thing for 30 years. Donald Trump has a very binary view of life and certainly of the world. And
That's just a really sophisticated way of saying this man never changes. He doesn't have any other thoughts in his brain. But, the China thing, there are levels to that, right? The way he thinks about economics is very, very stupid, right? But there are some baseline level ideas that do make sense, that are necessary to acknowledge, right? There is a problem with the ways in which we thought about China. And it has to do with literally business leaders' obsession with just squeezing every little bit of profit out of their businesses at the detriment of their own workers, right? We remember Wall Street and all these corporations that had any pennies to pinch together shifted all the manufacturing overseas so that they can just make more money, right? Because it was cheaper, because the value of the yuan is worth a lot less than the dollar, so it's cheap to manufacture there, considering, right? More expensive here because you have to deal with benefits, you have to deal with people having families, you have to care about the environmental costs, right? And in China, you didn't have to worry about that, right? That was, so Trump was very right about that, right? Now, I wish he had better people with better long-term plans, because his plans, as they are right now, seem to be to allow China to insulate itself further and further, allowing them to build up more and more of a financial and infrastructure partnership with South American countries, and making them look like the more responsible and mature and productive economic member of the world, right? It's because Donald Trump's insistence that bullets solve everything, they don't, right? Bullets should be something that is the ultimate last resort, because it doesn't take any smarts to use them, right? That's why we pair it backwards, right? Where you put your economic plans behind your military strength, right? The economy and the diplomacy comes first, and the military is supposed to be there as a damn, if something needs to be enforced or we need to protect something, they have our back with that. That's the way the United States literally did it after World War II. Now, a lot of them did not want to do that, and that goes into a whole nother stuff, because I could get distracted talking about that. But I think there was a specific senator, right, Vandenberg, who literally was an isolationist senator who did not want anything to do with the rest of the world. But when people when Pearl Harbor started, he realized, damn, just because the United States is separated by the rest of the world by two oceans, right? The most overpowered initial build, right? You're separated by thousands of miles from both countries. We get more and more technologically advanced, those just become extra seconds, right? It's no longer an impediment, right? The boats are made out of metal, they're not wood, right? They can withstand the storms, right? We got missiles, we can drop spears out of the sky, right? The tungsten spears drop out of the sky as a Star Wars project and all that. The world is a lot smaller than people imagine, right? So there was the idea behind Vandenberg that if we encourage, right, the stability of Europe, we encourage the stability of the rest of the world, right? We literally control and make sure that people are secure enough that there will never be a reason for them to cross those oceans and ever interfere with what we have, right? Because everyone else has to interact with different countries and different identities. And although it's not perfect, the United States has its own massive landmass, which is just its country, right? The only things that you have are the states arguing with each other. But even in the end, the states are a part of the United States. There's not this separation between all the EU countries, and how there are so many opinions that they need to take on to and make sure everyone's got it right. Now we have our own version of that in Congress, but national level, we don't have to deal with that particular issue.
And so to confront China, which he perceives as America's most important and dangerous rival, and to be able to use blunt instruments against them, and to come out and at least be able to say that you're a winner and they're a loser, it's hard to imagine anything more appealing to the core of his personality.
Please welcome the next president of the United States, Mr. Donald J. Trump!
There he is.
By 2016, Trump's message had finally found an audience. and his focus on trade and China had found its moment.
First time I ever met Trump, I was, coming out of Goldman Sachs and being somebody that's been in finance for a number of years, I was set to be unimpressed. I was actually...
The other thing is that, like, I hate that people give Donald Trump the credit for this, because this was not an old thought. I mean, this was not a new thought from people, right? People have known that there are going to be growing issues when it comes to China and their economic power and our reliance on them for cheap workers, right? Which is all you want, right? You want a cheap labor force so your costs go down, because one of the biggest costs is your labor force, right? And taking care of them, making sure they don't die, making sure they got money to spend so they want to come back to work, right? And in like previous administrations' national security strategy documents, right, they speak about China. In fact, Obama literally was trying to counter that with the TPP, right? I think it was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, where he was trying to build up an economic bloc that would be able to replace China, right? But because Republicans have forgotten the literal mandates of like what their job's supposed to be and the smart things that have been figured out through hard lessons, right? They wanted to close us off from that area, from those countries. And now kind of China's allowed to kind of spread its tendrils as it wishes. Because these people don't understand, like, just because you're strong doesn't mean you're always going to be able to convince people forever. Like, the easiest way to do that is just through economics, right? So, like, even Obama had this in his national security strategy.
Very impressed. Now, he didn't know a lot of details. He knew almost no policy. But what I found most extraordinary was when we got to the section on China, which I kind of threw out there.
In the Epstein.
Of a 2-hour meeting, almost 30 minutes or more was all about China.
We have a $500 billion deficit, trade deficit with China.
And you got to remember, a lot of this he was just reciting everything he'd heard from Lou Dobbs.
We're talking about a trade deficit of 350.
So Lou Dobbs created Donald Trump, right? Ray Cohen and Lou Dobbs created
$15 billion
the monster.
last year with the Chinese.
He's been a guy that's watched Lou Dobbs for 30 or 40 years, and the only thing he had formed as a worldview was China.
Because we can't continue to allow China to rape our country, and that's what they're doing. It's the greatest theft in the history of the world.
So, I mean, if we look at this, right, we're saying that Lou Dobbs, is he still alive? No, he's dead now, right? Sorry, that's kind of rude. But he's dead, and he don't gotta deal with the monster he created. But, no, he was here. Oh, damn, he died in 2004. Damn, dog. So he was here to at least see his creation gain power at least once. A TV host who presented Moneyline, later Lou Dobbs Tonight, from 1980 to 2009, and from 2011 to 2021. He started working with CNN. Oh my God. This is just so annoying that he resigned from CNN. Let's see. On the air, the Moneyline, which premiered in 1980. Lou Dobbs resigned from CNN in 1999, but rejoined the network in 2001. Lou Dobbs Tonight. From 2001. Damn. So he was from CNN, and then he resigned to host. He took a 2-year break, and then he went on Fox. He was an early promoter of birtherism, unfounded accusation U.S. Barack Obama is not a natural-born citizen, anti-illegal immigration views, opposition to NAFTA, staunch supporter. He infused the show pro-Trump coverage. He was one of 3 Fox Corporation program hosts named in a $2.7 billion defamation lawsuit by Smartmatic relating to the conspiracy theory used in attempts to overturn the 2020 United States presidential election. Let's see if we're like reading. This man went to Harvard and he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics. Like, this is the other thing about all of these people who go online and like shit on college education. They're all college educated. That's the other part, right? And they tell people to go away from these jobs because, oh, look, you know, you can get a trade job, when they don't realize that you literally do have to be good at some of the same skills to like work well in those jobs, right? You do have to know numbers to like do any kind of plumbing, any kind of electrical work, any kind of carpentry work. If you can't do math at a basic level, you're not going to be good at trades. And they like want to pretend that like if you go to the trades, you'll be able to figure everything out. You're still going to have to eat crap for multiple years. You have to build into it like any kind of system. And that doesn't even guarantee that it'll work out, right? But they just want to promote trades as the only option for what's going on, right? And it's like the idea that these people don't believe, like, unless you're like creating something physical or you're doing something that's immediately profitable, that it's not useful, right? What is it? You go to college, you learn the skills that help us to understand more about ourselves or understand the world around us, right? Like, those are the ways in which you can put some of those other skills into that aren't immediately profitable for individuals. And like, they just shit on college so much, right? An economics degree does not create anything. It just helps you to understand how humans operate within capitalism. And he probably spent all his time crapping on the kind of things that his college degree promotes, right? In order to be good at economics, you have to understand how people operate within these systems and how the numbers work, right? After college, Dobbs worked for federal anti-poverty programs in Boston and Washington, D.C., then returned to Idaho. Cast management, he married his high school sweetheart, first son was born. He got a job as a police and fire reporter. So he's just like a TV dude. Contacted by Ted Turner. Let's see. So I don't want to keep going over this, man. So this is the man whose economic advice transformed Donald Trump into the obsessed tariff king that he is in today's world. That's cool.
Talked in this kind of vernacular that kind of hit people in the gut, and particularly when we talk about trade and job shifting overseas.
What was his message to these people on trade? China's to blame?
The message is very simple, is that the elite ship the jobs overseas, and I'm going to bring it back.
I don't want to go on front line. I'm not doing that. So that's absolutely wild. The fact is, you don't have free trade. Blah, 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 blah. So Trump has just had these ideas for forever. The elite ship the jobs overseas, and I'm gonna bring them back. So, and that is why we have the Liberation Day tariffs on April 2nd, 2025. Took me a long ass time to get there. So, let's see. So if we're going back, were they absorbed by foreign exporters through lower export prices, or are they passed through to U.S. importers and ultimately consumers? Political rhetoric suggests foreign countries pay the tariffs. Indeed, this claim has been central to the policy's justification. Tariffs are framed as a tool to extract concessions from traded partners while generating revenue for U.S. government, at no cost to American households. Our research shows the opposite. American importers and consumers bear nearly all the costs. This finding has profound implications. If foreign exporters do not reduce their prices in response to tariffs, then the entire burden of the tariff falls on U.S. buyers. The tariff functions not as a tax on foreign producers, but as a consumption tax on Americans. Every dollar of tariff revenue represents a dollar extracted from American businesses and households. So that's, oh my God. So we have basically this idea that the tariff is a consumption tax. Now, because I'm not economics, what is a consumption tax? So it's a tax levied on the consumption. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add a little point right here. Because I'm just gonna copy that definition and I'll adjust it later. I'll put that at 12. So then kind of have to look into if it functions as a consumption tax, right? So we're going to do positives and negatives of consumption taxes. This is probably going to cost me. Okay. So this is from 2005. It's a little, it's 20 years old. All right, a consumption tax essentially taxes people when they spend money, and the income tax, you're fundamentally taxed when you earn money or when you get interest, dividends, capital gains, or so on. In a consumption tax, that wouldn't happen. You would be taxed essentially when you actually spend the money at the store. Let's see. So I'm gonna have to reread this. So if we want to have a consumption tax at the federal level, we need to tax a very broad base of consumption, almost all consumption. So if anything, the state and experienced states, it's very hard to actually implement a clean, simple, broad-based consumption tax. Well, if you say scrap the income tax and replace it with a sales tax or a value-added tax, then it would be a huge tax increase on old people who are paying tax on their incomes as they're earning it, thinking that when they got to retirement, they could spend their money and they'd be paying $1 for everything they bought. If you replace Bill, actually some estimates that if you replace all of our taxes with the sales tax rate would be something like 60%. So you can imagine going into retirement and finding out the price of all goods you're buying is now 60% higher than it was the day before. That would be like a 60% tax on all of the money that you had saved up over the course of your life. And there are other transition issues too, like the way it affects businesses. And so we need to do a little argument from Trump to replace income taxes. And so something to do. Again, I guess I like PBS, right? So Trump has said that tariff revenue may allow Americans to stop paying income taxes. The math doesn't add up. So if we're going from this, right, we should know and understand revenue generated from tariffs is around $200 billion. So Trump wants to replace income taxes. So we look into what percentage of the government budget is provided by income taxes. Individual income taxes provide roughly half, 49 to 50% of the U.S. federal government's budget. making the largest single source, with payroll taxes being the second largest, around 35%, followed by corporate taxes and other sources. So what we're gonna need to know sources of revenue for the U.S. federal government, FYTD 2026. So literally, oh, this is crazy. So we're gonna put FYTD. Don't know what that stands for yet. 2026 income taxes generated $606 billion, right? Revenue generated $2025 tariffs is around $200 billion. So here we have the first point, right? The fact is that tariff revenue would have to triple in order to replace income taxes. So this is actually so stupid. Like, these are the... Oh my god. These people are actually so annoying. I should have been... Income tax revenue. Alright. So that's... And then I do have to add that it's 49% of federal budget. Custom duties, corporate. Last updated. So what is fiscal year to date? 2026 is so October 2025. Government revenue from tax other sources is collected 1.2 trillion. So $142 billion. And we're gonna make sure customs duties. Customs duty tariff is a tax governments impose on imported goods, such as a fee for crossing borders used to protect, raise revenue, control for blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, if I have this correct, and some poor unfortunate soul that watches this. So, fiscal year to date, 2026, right, is October 1st. Right? So, yeah, October 2025 to September 30th, 2026. So this is fiscal year to date. So income taxes and customs duties. Damn. That's crazy. All right. This article originally appeared in PolitiFact. President Donald Trump has recently claimed his tariffs will generate so much money that Americans could soon stop paying federal income taxes, but experts say he's overpromised. Over the next couple years, I think we'll be cutting income tax. Could be almost completely cutting it. Because the money we're taking in is going to be so large, Trump told service members in the Thanksgiving video. He repeated the idea in a December 2nd cabinet meeting. I believe at some point in the not too distant future, you wouldn't even have to have income tax to pay because the money we're taking in is so great. Trump said, it's so enormous that you're not going to have income tax to pay. Whether you get rid of it or just keep it around for fun or have it really low, much lower than it is now, but you won't be paying income tax.
Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever. And we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars. And we're going to be given...
Wait.
Ever. Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever. And we're going to...
When was this actually released?
And we're going to be giving back refunds.
This is 1 month ago? Oh my God. This is only 1 month
Be giving
ago.
back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars, and we're going to be given a nice dividend to the people, in addition to reducing debt. As you know, I inherited a lot of debt, but...
The crazy thing about him saying he inherited a lot of debt is Trump is actually adding to national debt. So, yeah, I can't spell. Committee for a Responsible Budget. I'm gonna have to find a better one though. So, in a recent GOP primary presidential debate, former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley, Nimrata, claimed that President Trump added $8 trillion to the national debt, while Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said that Trump added $7.8 trillion to the debt. These statements are true, depending on how you measure additions to the debt. We estimate that the 10-year cost of the legislation and executive actions President Trump signed into law was about $8.4 trillion, with interest. It's also the case that the government accumulated $7.8 trillion of gross federal debt while President Trump was in office, though much of this is unrelated to President Trump's actions. So I'm skipping down. Debt was already projected to grow by about $3 trillion for the 4 years of his term when President Trump took office, and some of the additional debt accrued was the direct result of the COVID-19 pandemic and recession. It's also important to note that the government was holding an unusually large $1.6 trillion in cash when President Trump left office, which inflated the growth in debt relative to the deficit run during his time in office. A better way to measure how much Trump added to the debt is to evaluate the 10-year debt impact of the laws and executive orders he signed. We estimate that those added a combined $8.4 trillion to the debt over a 10-year period, consistent with Haley's claim. On net, almost all of the $8.4 trillion in 10-year debt approved by Trump came in the form of legislation, which, with costly executive actions largely offset by a unilateral expansion of tariffs. So let's see. The CARES Act, Response and Relief, other COVID relief, give them credit there. Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts, Bipartisan Budget Act of 2019, further consolidated Appropriations Act of 2020, Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018, and other legislative actions. Affordable Care Act, cost sharing reductions, terminations. Oh my God. And then prescription drug rebate rule. Okay, COVID relief. Damn. So if you exclude it, you guess $4.8 trillion. Let's see. So he added $8 trillion, but we can really fully associate 4.8 trillion. Hmm. So what is going on here? When was this released? What is George? House budget. Let's see. Oh, so they're directly refuting this article, where they roughly have, without COVID and all that, we roughly have some of the same. 500 billion, I think, is the difference. I will probably get back to this. All right. So let's see. This isn't the first time Trump has promised Americans a windfall from his tariffs, which represent the most extensive levies on foreign products seen in the U.S. in decades. In November, Trump promised Americans $2,000 each, Trump checks, from tariff revenue, a pledge that hinges on questionable math. He isn't even talking about this anymore. Replacing federal income tax with tariff revenue is even more daunting. The U.S. has collected about $257 billion in tariff revenue so far this year, and $167 billion of that stemmed from tariffs Trump has imposed in his second term. Okay. The federal... So this is December 4th of this last year. Federal income tax, meanwhile, brought in about $2.4 trillion in 2024, which is more than 14 times what Trump's second-term tariffs are generating. It is not remotely possible that tariffs could be used to eliminate the income tax, said Steve Ellis, president of the Taxpayers for Common Sense, a group that tracks the federal budget. In 2024, income taxes accounted for just under half of the federal government's revenue. The second largest share, about 35%, came from payroll taxes, which are withheld from workers' paychecks to fund Social Security and Medicaid. Corporate income taxes came in third at about 11%. Tariff revenue was way down the list. Uh-oh. I don't know if I really want to open this up. Yeah, no, I'm all good. So... well, we're in 2026. What did it say? Federal income tax. Where did I get 600 billion from? 606 billion. Oh, fiscal year to date. Okay. I'm stupid. Okay. So right now, so that's year to date, so we're not even there. So we have around, was it 9? We have 9 months to go to get to this point. I'm smart, but I'm learning. So let's see. We're gonna take that off because that's still a true statistic, but I messed myself up. So it would not have to triple. It would have to 14x to replace income taxes because total revenue is 2 point, what is it? They put it up here, right? 2.4 trillion. $2.4 trillion. Okay. So, damn. They aren't projected to exceed 260 billion as far as the eye could see. Fiscal year to date, we'll put so as of November 2025, I was already on this page. This is 6 days ago. Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. According to daily U.S. Treasury data, this is January 13th, 26, tariff revenues rose sharply in 2025 for the full calendar year. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security collected $287 billion in customs duties, taxes, fees, up 192% versus the prior year. Roughly a third of that amount was collected in the fourth quarter alone, which was an increase of 4.2% compared to the previous quarter, and 281% compared to the fourth quarter of 2024. I was gonna send the text. I don't know if so as I keep on going, tariff rates could stabilize over the coming year. Blah 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 blah. One exception is Vietnam, where the AETR continues to rise sharply. Imports from Vietnam made up to 6.3% of total goods imports in the third quarter of 2025, up from 4.5% the previous year, and suggesting that it is an increasingly important trading partner for the United States. However, October saw a slower increase in tariffs on Vietnamese imports compared to prior months in 2025. Let's see. Vietnam visit. No. Golf course. Trump. I'm just trying to see. Trump Organization. Whoever Valentino is. Let's see. Same thing. So this is in May. Maybe that's too far away to associate and draw a thread to that. But this is actually crazy that it's just this easy to get Trump to treat you better. Just give him a little golf course, and people are just like, give the child what he wants. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh said Eric Trump's visit motivated us to expedite this project, and urged local authorities to provide maximum support and facilitate completion of the 2,446-acre resort. Eric Trump is also set to meet Ho Chi Minh City officials on Thursday to explore plans for a possible skyscraper in Vietnam's southern business hub, according to internal schedules seen by Reuters. Projects to be completed in Vietnam will be the envy of all of Asia and the entire world, said Eric Trump, who is senior vice president of the Trump Organization. He praised his Vietnamese partner, real estate firm Kinh Bach City, and promised to visit the country very often. 5-star hotels, champion-style golf courses, and luxurious residential estates and unparalleled amenities in Vietnam, the consortium said in a statement in October. Okay, so let's see. October saw a slower increase in tariffs on Vietnamese imports compared to prior months in 2025. Maybe that's crazy, but maybe they had to literally just renegotiate something. Oh my god. Vietnam was meant to be hit with some of the highest U.S. tariff rates of any country at 46% when President Trump announced his Liberation Day plan for global tariffs on April 2nd. Trump has since postponed the tariffs for 90 days. Lowering tariffs and non-tariff barriers, intensifying the fight against trade frauds and counterfeiting, and providing favorable conditions to Starlink, owned by Trump's close ally Elon Musk, to roll out satellite internet services in Vietnam. Let's see. I saw something. Trump, Elon Musk. Trump, Elon Musk dinner. Shared a lovely dinner at Mar-a-Lago after public feuding. Had a lovely dinner last night with POTUS and FLOTUS. 2026 is going to be amazing. So, Musk, Trump, Epstein. Tweet. Where is it? Let's see if we can get an image of this. Time to drop the really big bomb. Oh, I don't know if people can see that. Infernal keyboard. Alright, hold on. Time to drop the really big bomb. At Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. DJT. June 6, 2025. Now, we still haven't gotten the full Epstein files. And, you know, everything's gotten so crazy that that's kind of gone under the radar, that they've already violated federal law, that they were supposed to release that within a month, and then they gave us a piecemeal drop and then said, hey, we need to pull more people from even more government organizations, redact them so we don't know the messy stuff that was happening with our president. And so I'm kind of just getting rid of some of these. We'll go back to these. 50-year mortgage. All right. Trump promised Americans $2,000 each from what he called the trillions of dollars in tariff revenues he said his administration collected. People that are against tariffs are fools, Trump said in a November 9th True Social post. We are taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down our enormous debt, $37 trillion. Record investment in the USA, plants and factories going up all over the place. A dividend of at least $2,000 a person. Just a one-time payment. That's going to be great. That's going to change everything. Not including high-income people. Will be paid to everyone. Let's see. As they're going down, But the tax foundation calculated that a $2,000 tariff dividend for each person earning under $100,000 would cover 150 million adult recipients and cost nearly 300 billion or more if children are qualified. That's well above the amount of money that tariffs have raised so far. So we can adjust this. So we can say it's brought in 290. Meanwhile, a new payout would have to be approved by Congress, and lawmakers have already declined to act on this idea once when they passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Oba! Trump's pair of powers will also have passed muster with the Supreme Court, which is hearing a challenge to them, and that's in the Learning Resources Incorporated versus Trump, and then also Costco and a bunch of other businesses are within that. Another thing to add is that these people are two-timing creeps, because I know for a fact Howard Lutnick, children, and then there was refund. Yep. Last month, Wired reported that the investment banking arm of Cantor Fitzgerald, a financial services company led by the sons of U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, was exploring creating a financial product for clients to bet on whether President Donald Trump's signature tariffs would be struck down in court. In response to Wired's reporting, Democratic Senators Ron Wyden and Elizabeth Warren sent a letter to the Cantor Fitzgerald chairman Brandon Lutnick on Wednesday, demanding more information about the firm's activities. Given that one of the purported architects of President Trump's tariff policy is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, your father and former chairman and CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald Limited Partners, the firm's actions raise obvious conflict of interest and insider dealing concerns, the lawmakers wrote. What is not being reported about our business is absolutely false. Cantor is not in the business of positioning any risk-taking views of facilitating business and litigation claims involving the legality of U.S. tariffs, Erica Chase, a spokesperson for Cantor Fitzgerald, said in an emailed statement. God. But according to Wired's previous reporting, the investment bank that made Lutnick a billionaire was recently letting certain clients wager that Trump's tariffs will be eventually ruled unlawful, at which point companies that have paid the import duties could apply to get their money back. Experts say that the purported deals are a form of litigation in finance, an increasingly popular category of investing in which financial firms seek to make money from potential legal settlements. Trump announced in February that the U.S. put steep tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. He widened the trade war in April to include nearly every nation that sells goods to the U.S., which Trump said would be subject to reciprocal tariffs ranging from 10 to 50%. State officials and small businesses responded by filing a flurry of lawsuits against the Trump administration, argued that the president exceeded his legal authority under the EPA and the tariffs should be ruled illegal. The U.S. Supreme Court of International Trade sided with the plaintiffs. Sided with the plaintiffs in one of the cases, but the Trump administration quickly appealed the ruling. The appeals court has allowed the tariffs to stay in effect until a final decision is reached. In their letter, Wyden and Warren specifically asked Brandon Lutnick whether anyone at Cantor is in contact with the Trump administration about the tariffs. Has anyone at Cantor or Cantor Fitzgerald Limited LP communicated with any person within the executive branch, including President Trump, Secretary Lutnick, any individual employed by the Commerce Department, or any other individuals about tariffs, refunds, or exclusions in the legal cases involving EPA? The letter asked. If so, please provide a list of all such conversations. August 27th. So obviously not. Cantor Fitzgerald was the iconic corporate victim of the 9/11 attacks. Located on floors 101 to 105 of the North Tower, the financial services company lost 658 of the 960 employees in its New York headquarters. The CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, lost his own brother in the attack. Damn. The company subsequently became a generous benefactor to the families of the victims, and its charitable work soon spread beyond its own corporate family. Among other causes, the company donated substantial sums of money to the victims of Hurricane Sandy and a tornado in Oklahoma. The bet is this: if the Supreme Court upholds lower court rulings declaring the president's tariffs illegal, companies that were whacked by them will be entitled to refunds on the import duties that they paid. So, Cantor, what's the name of this place? Fitzgerald. That's fine. Oh, I'm streaming. I'm filming, but if you want to be in it, that's fine. No, I've been.
Are you live streaming?
I guess so. I've been just talking for like an hour and a half. I have no clue. I got some kind of like scam chat or something. I actually have no clue, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what that is. It burned a little bit, you said? Miss Lady? You said it burned a little bit?
Yeah, you want me to bring it?
I would love that with like some water or something. That's fine. I'm almost done though, too. I'm just like going through these stories about like the tariffs. All right. So this could mean a bucket full of money. So the financial services industry, which can be seen riding the thermal high above any pile of money, dead by the side of the road, has announced that it will buy the legal rights to these refunds. One of the very first vultures. Yay.
I'm sorry.
What?
It's so pathetic. Do you want me to make you a new one if it's too bad?
Oh, damn.
It's kind of crispy.
Oh, damn.
Listen to how it sounds when you put it down on a plate. I heard that. I was like, damn, I'm not really doing
And
a
you
good
took the,
job.
I bet you took the soft bite too. It was soft. Damn. That's how I get treated. Could you actually make?
You see what I mean? It's like not inedible, but it's not the best. I'll make you a new one. Or eat what you can of that one, and I'll bring you a fresh one.
All right. Do we have any food?
We have any what?
Food?
We have leftover chicken and.
Yeah.
Well, I have these. You're hungry. What do you think else? Maybe I'll go out and get some. Is the road that bad?
I don't think so. Oh damn, the bottom is a little crispy.
Yeah, don't eat that. It'll give you cancer.
Wait, really?
It's not good for your stomach.
Here. So like the burned.
Let me confiscate that. Let me
I will eat the rest of it though.
Let me get you a new one, sir.
Leave me alone. Thank you, Tara. So that was a banana muffin that she made for me. My heart, my love. Whatever. A little break. All right. Accidentally hit the space bar. Okay. You'll buy the legal rights to those refunds. So, a services company make Okay, so charging restocking or processing fees. Let's see. What, the terrorist part? Okay. I should probably... I do not want that. Ooh. There we go. All right. So, some U.S. companies are hedging their bets on the Supreme Court case against President Donald Trump's sweeping emerging tariffs by selling their rights to collect potential government refunds of the taxes to outside investors. So when was this? This was December 31. So I guess we're having this little bet. Are selling their rights to tariff refund claims. And, well, I don't know, potentially yet. So, Atlanta-based Kids 2, which makes 95% of its toys and infant products in China, is one. Uh-oh. So let's see. See what they make. Man, that's kind of dope. Little baby stuff. So the vast majority of these items are made in China. Okay. So that's interesting. So, Kids 2. Mark Mintman, the company's CFO, calls it a cost recovery action. He first heard about selling potential refunds during a September meeting with bankers in New York, where one mentioned that a secretive market has emerged for selling the claims. Everything gets financialized, every single thing, no matter what. Under the deals, companies receive a fraction of the refund as an upfront payment. Oh my God, it's a fucking payday loan. They keep that money if the tariffs are overturned, and the government is directed to refund the taxes, but they give up the balance to the investors. They also keep the money if the tariffs are upheld, while investors get nothing. These dudes can't help themselves, so they're just gambling on goddamn everything. Alright, so they're selling their funds. So if we're talking about exactly what that turns into. So, number one, right? So, companies receive an upfront payment, right? Keep the money if tariffs are overturned and government has to pay back but investors gain the remaining balance. Company will investors get. All right, so I mean, I'm thinking about it more now. this is also something that would potentially like mess with small businesses as well. So companies receiving upfront payment. Kids 2 got $2 million, it seems like, right? Or 23 cents on the dollar. I'm not going to embarrass myself by doing the backwards math on that. So hold on for a second. So they're really, so maybe idea. These financial services companies truly believe that tariffs will be found, well, we'll say Donald Trump's use of the IEPA is unconstitutional and a violation of the separation of powers. Congress is the only entity of a tariff is a consumption tax. I can spell. Alright. So I'm actually gonna get rid of that. So hey, little lady. Hey, now you like the weather, huh? What's up? Why are you taking a photo of me? I'm not some just some creature, you know? Hello?
You're in your natural habitat.
Okay. Alright. So bundle this up. So this is just the latest twist on Wall Street's keen ability to capitalize on cash flow. Similar markets exist for selling future payments from the structured lawsuit settlements and lottery winning annuities. David Bowie famously sold his royalty cash flow in what became known as Bowie bonds. So they brought up David Bowie. President Trump has said it would be an economic disaster if tariffs are overturned. It's not clear when the High Court will issue its ruling and whether companies will be entitled to refunds that could total more than $100 billion if Trump loses. We remain confident in the legal merits of the president's lawful use of tariffs, said a White House official in a text response to Reuters. Mittman said he worked with a division of Jefferies LLC to find the buyer, a Boston-based hedge fund. He declined to identify the buyer because of a non-disclosure in their agreement. A spokesman for Jefferies declined to comment on their work brokering such deals. What is Jefferies LLC? This is interesting. So, do I even want it? This is a 15-page document. Do I even want to look at this? Damn, in 2025, Jefferies delivered 7.3 billion in net revenues. Our second half investment banking net revenues exceeded the first half by over 50%. Global advisory. Market share, they get 4.5%. Global liquidity markets, 4.2%. Wow, okay. I'm just reading. Alright, they love their people who work for them. In 2025, we recorded investment banking revenues of 3.8 billion. Damn. The world's sixth largest investment bank. We served as advisor on many of the most consequential transactions of the year. $23 billion, A&T's acquisition of wireless assets firm EchoStar. $15 billion, intracellular sale to Johnson & Johnson. Eaton Corporation's acquisition of BOYD's thermal management division, $10 billion. Wow, okay. So this is Jeffries. Crazy. Jeffries. Six largest what was it? Investment bank. I can spell. Facilitated. What are we facilitated? Okay, we're coming back. A Boston-based hedge fund. So let's see. Hedge fund firms in Boston. I mean, Wikipedia, people can add. Oh, wait, what is this? Fresh muffins. And it's got a butter smile on it? How do I... What about yours? You don't want any more? Like you... It's already... Like it looks like it's steaming. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Miss Lay. She brought me a banana muffin with butter. My cholesterol. I'm glad to take it out. Only 42 people work at one of these hedge fund firms. Bracebridge Capital. Wait, what? Oh. It's gonna be made. Largest hedge fund owned by a woman, managed by a woman. Okay. She's a saver. There's a reason. I'm gonna leave you half. I guess you heard me. So there's a couple of them. Alright, so there was pressure from the hedge fund to conclude the transaction quickly, said Mintman. The hedge fund required the deal to close quickly before oral arguments at the High Court, which took place in early November. The Supreme Court typically takes months to issue rulings after hearing oral arguments. The Trump administration has asked for a quick decision, but the timing remains unclear. Mintman said, among other things, He talked to his legal counsel to get an opinion on the trade and checked Polymarket, the prediction market, to see what the chances were that the tariffs would be ruled unconstitutional. So he considered his lawyer and then the betting program that's going to destroy all like the young men in America, because everything's a bet. The company, known for such brands such as Baby Einstein, received a total of $2 million, a fraction of the $15 million. You see, you don't gotta do math if you just keep on reading. That they paid to U.S. Customs through September. God damn, kids too received 23 cents on the dollar for tariffs that paid under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The use of this law to impose tariffs have drawn wide criticism, since it doesn't directly reference tariffs. It does say the president has the authority to regulate imports during a national emergency. So, our main thing is Trump has declared a national emergency. Let's see. The company got less, 9 cents on the dollar, for separate emergency tariffs aimed at stopping fentanyl smuggling. I'm gonna have to look that one up. The lower payment reflects the assumption that fentanyl tariffs are more likely to be upheld, said Mittman. Let's see what these emergency tariffs have been. Hold up. So, declared national emergency for Alright. Okay. So I'm just on the White House website to see if there's a explicit statement of so fentanyl is classification 1. Okay. On February 1st, 2025, Donald Trump issued Executive Order 14193, stating that the failure of Canada to do more to address illicit fentanyl and other drug trafficking constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to United States national security and foreign policy. The executive order declared a national emergency under the National Emergencies Act. We're going to have to look that one up and see what we get from that. And invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 to impose a 10% tariff on Canadian energy imports and a 25% tariff on all other Canadian goods. The president subsequently paused implementation of the tariffs on February 3rd and imposed duties on March 4th, and indefinitely suspended tariffs on goods compliant with the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement on March 7th. While these IEEPA tariffs remain in effect, Canada is exempt from the 10% U.S. universal tariff implemented on April 5th. So that would be... I'm going to see. So, because there is a... I live in Boston, so Quebec electricity sent to Boston. Canadian energy imports. So mass receiving hydropower from Canada after line's completion. Power from long-awaited energy transmission lines now flowing from Quebec to Massachusetts. At a State House ceremony Friday, the governor and state energy officials celebrated the completion of the New England Clean Energy Connect line with a symbolic flipping of a giant power switch. Let's see. Let's see this giant switch. Okay. Oh my god. We're gonna have to replay that because the quality's trash, I think.
Line now flowing from Quebec to Massachusetts. The governor and state energy officials celebrated the completion of the New England Clean Energy Connect line at the State House today with that symbolic flipping of a giant power switch. It's expected to provide the Commonwealth with nearly 20% of its overall electricity and save ratepayers money.
So NBC 10's consumer investigative reporter Bianca Beltran is here to break all this down for us. And the question everyone is going to have is, how much is this going to save us on our energy bills?
Yeah, it's a big question, especially in these colder months. And according to state officials, they estimate that electric customers can expect to save around $18 to $20 a year. So it's not a huge savings. I mean, depending on the utility provider, about $1.52 to $1.63 a month. But cumulatively, that is estimated to add up to a reduction of $50 million a year on electric bills. Now, Governor Maura Healey says having power guaranteed throughout the length of the project contract will help stabilize rates.
It's cold right now. People are grappling with their energy bills, and this power right away is going to provide relief.
So I guess I can't really complain that Massachusetts is finding more energy resources, because we did a very short-sighted thing where Massachusetts doesn't have any like energy. It's not a producer of energy. We import a lot of it. I think we get stuff from like Philadelphia, and that's natural gas, and so we burn that to generate electricity. And I think we shut down our capacity. Like, I think we like cut in half our capacity to deliver natural gas cheaply. And so, like, crazy thing for a lot of people is that your supply, so like the amount that you use up in electricity, a lot of times is costs the exact same as the delivery. And it, to me, I may be stupid, but it really shouldn't be that way, right? I shouldn't have like a $200 supply bill, but then it also costs $200 to get the electricity to me, right? And some people have even crazier bills. I don't know how people deal with that. I don't make enough money to deal with that shit. But it's like absolutely crazy that the electricity costs in Massachusetts. And I did a very boneheaded thing in getting this home built where it's all electricity, but I did not immediately do like solar panels or batteries. And so I pay, it's a duplex, I pay for both floors electricity. So I'm just like, I hate looking at the bill because it's like it's a whammy both times. And I'm just, I hate it. And so I guess like I save $20 to $80 per year. That's crazy. It's not going to really make my month to month better, but I guess you want to accumulate enough resources to make it actually do well. But that's disappointing.
This power is clean, consistent, and affordable. We've locked this power in at an affordable price for the next 20 years, and we'll be getting power cheaper than we could on the market.
Now, this $1.6 billion project has been over 10 years in the making. It faced pushback over the environmental impact of construction in Maine, leading to a referendum to block it that was later overturned in court, delaying the project. Now, despite that long road, today the Massachusetts Secretary of Environmental...
So that's the thing, right? For a lot of these projects, you need the states to be aligned with each other ideologically. And Maine just wants to remain a forest, right? I probably shouldn't just assume, but that's actually disappointing. Why would they block that?
Affairs says they are exploring more transmission projects across the Northeast.
Well, Bianca, before you go, how is the energy actually being produced?
Well, this is a hydropower project, meaning that it generates electricity using the force of moving water. And the COO of Hydro-Quebec, the Canadian energy company supplying the energy, says it will reduce the equivalent emissions of 700,000 cars every year for the next 20 years. JC, Matt.
NBC 10 consumer investigative reporter Bianca Beltran, as always, thank you.
So I'm going to put that on their interesting stories. Now, the only reason I brought that up is because I was wondering if those, I know that they're paused right now, but if Donald Trump undoes that pause and then puts a 10% tariff on that, which will even lower the minuscule savings we get in the immediate term with this particular project to even just make power even more expensive in the state of Massachusetts. Okay, I'm going to go away from that. That was a distraction. So, all right. So these U.S. actions and Canadian retaliatory measures have strained bilateral relations and may call into question long-standing economic, political, and security ties. Congress may assess the situation and consider whether and how to shape U.S. policy using its legislative powers and prerogatives. The Canadian government has taken steps to address Trump's border concerns since November 2024, when he announced his intention to impose tariffs on Canadian imports. In December of 2024, the Canadian government announced a $910 million plan to increase border surveillance and enhance coordination with the U.S. government, building on existing arrangements. The Canadian government has also issued a new intelligence directive targeting organized crime, appointing the fentanyl czar, listed 7 transnational criminal organizations as terrorist entities, and launched a joint strike force in accordance with policy commitments it said it made to the Trump administration on February 3rd, 2025. On March 4th, then Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asserted that the U.S. imposition of tariffs, despite Canada's efforts to demonstrate the legal pretext for the tariffs, was totally false. The Canadian government imposed a 25% retaliatory tariffs, $21 billion worth on U.S. imports on March 4th, destroyed, whiskey, Jim Beam a little bit, and has connected public consultations on a potential second phase of tariffs, around $87 billion worth of U.S. imports. Mark Carney, who became Canada's Prime Minister on March 14th, stated that Canada will maintain retaliatory tariffs until the United States makes credible, reliable commitments to free and fair trade. And instead of trying to lessen that, pushing them into China's hands, basically. Let's see. The IEEPA tariffs may also call into question U.S.-Canada trade relationship, which is among the largest in the world and includes highly integrated energy and automotive markets. In 2024, Canada was the third largest source of U.S. good imports, $413 billion, and the top destination for U.S. good exports, $349 billion. In 2024, Canada exported 76% of its goods to and imported half of its goods from the United States. So it's just so stupid. The person we trade with the most, we're going to piss them off. Additional trade actions also seem to be straining bilateral relations, including U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs, U.S. automotive tariffs, which largely not fully exclude USMCA compliant goods, and Canadian retaliation. Canadian officials and observers are discussing strategies for reducing Canada's economic dependence on the United States, including reducing interprovincial trade barriers and diversifying trade relationships. U.S. and Canadian officials appear to be reassessing their border bilateral relationships. U.S. officials reportedly have threatened to annul several long-standing bilateral agreements, and President Trump has repeatedly asserted that Canada should become a U.S. state. 51st. Such U.S. statements and the imposition of U.S. tariffs have sparked widespread anti-American sentiment. In Canada, with the percentage of Canadians viewing the United States favorably fallen to 24% in March 2025. Prime Minister Carney has stated that the old U.S.-Canada relationship, based on deepening economic integration and tight security cooperation, is over. On March 28th, President Trump and Prime Minister Carney announced that the U.S.-Canadian governments plan to negotiate the elements of a new bilateral relationship after Canada's April 28th parliamentary elections. On April 2nd, 2025, the Senate passed a joint resolution to terminate the national emergency underlying the IEEPA tariffs on Canada. The House could take up joint resolution, though it voted on March 11 to effectively block expedited consideration, as provided for in the National Emergencies Act, of any joint resolution terminating the Canada-related national emergency. Some members of Congress introduced legislation to limit the president's ability to impose tariffs under IEEPA. Congress may monitor the effects of tariffs on the United States-Canada bilateral relations. So let's see. If it's all about how much fentanyl comes in from Canada. So we're looking at, this is from the DEA website. Fentanyl flow to the United States. So when was this? January 2020. Okay, so how does fentanyl come into the United States? So one, we're starting here. Fentanyl in powder form as well as unregistered pill presses, stamps, and dyes are shipped via mail services. So that's 11111, all in China, right? 2, the powder fentanyls are processed and mixed with heroin, sold as heroin, or pressed into pills and sold in the Canadian drug market. Bam, Canadian drugs. Some fentanyl products are smuggled from Canada into the United States for sale on a smaller scale. Okay. The powder fentanyls are processed and mixed with heroin, sold as heroin, or pressed into pills sold in the United States drug market. So we're having fentanyl go from China to Canada. Fentanyl from China to the United States. Fentanyl from China to Mexico. 5. China also has, not only has the fentanyl in powder form, but they also have the precursors to fentanyl. From action is shipped via mail services, so they're literally sending fentanyl to these other places as well. Precursors are used to clandestinely manufacture fentanyls. So fentanyl is made in China. Fentanyl is made. Wait, what happened? Do we have a 5 over here? No. So it is manufactured. The precursors are sent to the United States. And then in Mexico, they are making them. In Canada, they are making them using the precursors. We also have a problem where fentanyl is sent to India. And India also sends pills to Central America. All right, then we have 5. The precursors are sent to China. Okay. Or that's where the precursors are, right? 6. Precursors are used to manufacture fentanyl. So we have fentanyl being made in India. And then 7. Precursors are likely smuggled across the northwest border into Mexico to manufacture fentanyls. So we have 7. Damn. So currently China remains a primary source of fentanyl and fentanyl-related substance traffic through international mail and express consignment operations enforcement, as well as the main source for all fentanyl-related substance traffic into the United States. Seizures of fentanyl sourced from China average less than 1 kilogram in weight and often test above 90% concentration of pure fentanyl. Damn. So, damn. As Beijing and Hong Kong Special Autonomous Region place restrictions on more precursor chemicals, Mexican transnational criminal organizations are diversifying their source of supply. It is evidenced by fentanyl shipments from India, allegedly destined for Mexico. On May 4, 2018, the Hong Kong SAR updated their drug law to control the fentanyl precursors. Not even going to try on that. Nope. This matches China's schedule in ANPP and NPP on July 1st, 2017. The move by the Hong Kong Special Autonomous Region is considerable since synthetic opioids produced and shipped by China may transit the Hong Kong SAR en route to the United States. Effective May 1st, 2019, China officially controlled all forms of fentanyl as a class of drugs. This fulfilled the commitment that President Xi made during the G20 summit. The implementation new measure includes investigations of known fentanyl manufacturing areas, stricter control of internet sites advertising fentanyl, stricter enforcement of shipping regulations, the creation of special teams to investigate leads on fentanyl trafficking. Mexican TCOs are producing increased quantities of fentanyl and illicit fentanyl-containing tablets, with some TCOs using increasingly sophisticated clandestine laboratories and processing methods, laboratory-grade glassware, unregulated chemicals, industrial-sized tablet presses. DE, working in conjunction with Mexican officials, have seized and dismantled numerous fentanyl pill pressing operations with and fentanyl synthesis laboratories in 2018 and 2019, highlighting the role that TCOs play in supplying the United States fentanyl market. Fentanyl is smuggled across the U.S.-Mexico border in low concentration, high volume loads. Kilogram seizures often contain less than a 10% concentration of fentanyl. Damn. TCOs are increasingly producing wholesale quantities of illicit fentanyl pills and smuggling them into the United States. In December 2018, Mexican officials, in combination with DEA authorities, seized a illicit pill mill in Azcapotzalco, Mexico City. Law enforcement officials seized illicit fentanyl-laced oxycodone production of fentanyl-laced illicit pills. As with the Mexicali, Mexico fentanyl pill mill seized in September 2018, DEA report indicating the organization operating the pill mill in Mexico City is linked to the Sinaloa cartel, right? So when was El Chapo caught? Okay, so he was caught in 2014. Okay, so it was 4 years after. Let's see. DA reporting continues to indicate that the Sinaloa and the new generation Jalisco cartels are likely the primary trafficking groups responsible for all smuggling fentanyl into the United States from Mexico. To date, fentanyl synthesis and fentanyl pill production operations have dismantled in Mexico have either occurred in territories controlled by these cartels or have had involvement by members or associates of these cartels. In addition, TCOs are known to control the trafficking corridors in Mexico that connect to California and Arizona, indicating drugs passing through these associated areas would need to be approved by these organizations. I'm going to go to the outlook. Flow of fentanyl to the United States in the near future will probably continue to be diversified. The emergence of India as a precursor chemical and fentanyl supplier, as well as China's newly implemented regulations, have significant ramifications for how TCOs, fentanyl, and fentanyl precursor chemical supply chains will operate. Mexican TCOs are likely poised to take a larger role in the production and the supply of fentanyl and fentanyl-containing illicit pills to the United States, especially if China's proposed regulations and enforcement protocols are implemented effectively. Fentanyl production and precursor chemical sources may also expand beyond the currently identified countries, as fentanyl lacks the geographic source boundaries of heroin and cocaine, as these must be produced from plant-based materials. I have to put this somewhere else, not in tariffs. Well, we could add that in. Sources of fent in Canada and US and Mexico. This was in 2020. When was this source? I will just put 1/1/2020. All right. So how much fentanyl, I don't know how to spell fentanyl, comes from Canada v. Mexico? So when we compare it, 97 to 99% of the fentanyl seized at the U.S. border comes from the southern border with Mexico. In 2024, over 21,000 pounds of fentanyl was seized at the Mexican border compared to 43 pounds at the Canadian border. Less than 1% is estimated to come from Canada. While some Canadian-produced fentanyl is smuggled to the United States via mail or the dark web, it represents a very small fraction of the total supply. Not saying that they shouldn't do a roll. So literally 1%. Holy crap, it would seem like China is the main source. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now we're back to this. Right? So we're back to the original document about companies that are selling their future tariff refunds to, what is it, these hedge funds for like 23 cents on the dollar for kids too, or 9 cents on the dollar if it has to do with drugs. Interesting. Known as special situation trades, these trades are attractive to investors because assets are uncorrelated to broader markets and offer potential upside if the court strikes down the tariffs as unconstitutional. Two legal sources working with buyers and sellers in the market told Reuters. There's a very well-established market where there are buyers who are willing to produce instant liquidity to parties that are uncertain as to when, if ever, they'll be able to monetize these claims, said Renario Diaversia, partner and chair of the law firm Oryx restructuring team. Oryx started seeing demand for refund claims soon after tariffs were implemented in April. Many buyers are currently quoting 16 to 17% for fentanyl tariff claims and 26 to 28% for reciprocal tariff claims, said Amy Pasacreta of counsel on Oryx restructuring team. So we're seeing average immediate let's see, and then so we can put this, if they're receiving upfront payment, 16 to 17% of total refund amount for fentanyl. All right, and then so what we're gonna see here is if it's a reciprocal tariff, we have about 28%, which is okay. So this is just taking advantage of all companies that don't have immediate liquidity. So some are saying, you know what, I'd rather get my 10, 20, 30 cents because the Supreme Court could very well say they're constitutional. And if that's the case, at least I get a little something recouped. That's a good description of Kids 2 motivation. Mittman said it took 2 years to get fully reimbursed for tax credits the company received under a program that rewarded firms for avoiding layoffs during the COVID pandemic. I'd anticipate customs would be inundated if this is overturned, he said, so not expecting we'd get anything quickly. Given the value of money received now, rather than possibly years from now, the company thought it was a good deal. He also liked the odds. Going by the history of this administration's success with cases before the Supreme Court, Mittman said he estimates a favorite outcome for Kids 2 is still only 50-50. In the back of my mind, he said, I think I got $2 million for free. To be sure, many companies are passing up the opportunity to sell their claims. Mark Bissell, CEO of the vacuum maker Bissell Incorporated, said he's been approached about selling his refund rights but has no interest. He said it reminds him of late-night television ads that offer to buy the rights to payouts under their life insurance policies, and if he suspects the administration will find a way to keep collecting taxes. My view is that the Supreme Court finds tariffs illegal, that the administration has Plan B or C or D up their sleeve to throw at it nets. Meanwhile, back at Kids 2, they are considering another round of hedging to recoup some of the tariffs paid since September. Mittman said he just asked Jeffries whether investors are still buying claims, and if so, what are they paying? Let's see. Oh no. I ain't buying it. I'll come back to it. Alright. So, we're going into still the tariffs. We still have to go back to the original article. So, companies like this, so they're hedging on the bet that these would be found illegal, right? That's what they want. They don't just want to give money to these companies. So far we found out Trump has declared a national emergency. It has to do with fentanyl, it has to do with drugs, it has to do with reciprocal tariffs, right? And so he's declared 2 national emergencies. I have to look at the National Emergency Act at some point. Liberation Day tariffs. He, at some point, expected tariff revenue to replace the federal income tax and how much that represents of the federal budget, which is like around 49%, right? And the U.S. government receives about $2.4 trillion in federal income tax, right? And so in order for tariffs to replace federal income tax, it would have to go up 14 times. And since it's a consumption tax, I feel as though that is, let's see, I think there's the idea that a consumption tax is even more aggressive against people that are not inherently rich. And this is why consumption tax. Okay, consumption taxes like sales tax or VAT disproportionately burden the poor because they spend a larger share of their income on basic goods, making these taxes inherently regressive. So, hitting lower incomes harder as a percentage of their earnings, while the rich can pay more in total dollars but less of a percentage of their vast income, creating significant inequality issues despite the rich consuming more goods. So, we have this idea that a regressive tax affects poor people more because it taxes a larger share of their overall income versus rich people. So this shifts the tax burden from income, often progressive, to spending, impacting low-income families most when they can least afford it, leading to debates about fairness and potential policy solutions like rebates or UBI to mitigate the effects. So some argue for, okay, so then we're adding progressive. I'm not going to click on that. Taxfoundation.org. Okay. Brookings. And there's another story. Ideal consumption tax. So we'll get back to it, I guess. All right. All right. Don't need that one. This is one that people had issue with. Don't need that one. All right. And so as we keep on going, so it's a flawed policy that will not make enough to even get close to getting rid of federal income taxes, which is the main reason why he said that we can do it. Okay. The only ways we can get rid of the federal income tax is to borrow more money, shrink the federal government, increase tariffs enough to equal income tax revenue. That would mean setting tariff rates incredibly high, well over 60%. President of the American Action Forum, Douglas Holtz Eakin. Tariffs that big would actually radically distort production and purchase patterns and diminish the amount of imports. As a result, tariff rates would have to raise even further. So you have to see, in order, oh, hold up, that's out of order. So in order to fully replace income taxes, let's see, what do we think? Tariffs would have to be around 60%. which would dramatically, what was he? Slow, we'll see, production and lower imports into the United States. And basically destroy middle and low income, we'll say, families. Okay, so let's see. So again, from what we've learned so far, tariffs are still absolutely stupid and they make absolutely no sense. Okay, let's see. So, could a consumption tax be feasible? The idea of switching from a largely income-based tax system to one that's more dependent on consumption has been debated for decades. Many European countries levy a value-added tax, which is essentially a sales tax broken into several pieces at various stages, from a product's creation to its final sale. The idea faces challenges in the U.S. Many states already tax retail sales, so a new federal tax layered on top would pose an extra burden, especially lower-income families that have to spend larger percentage of their income than wealthier families do. The sales tax would have to be around 40%, and there would be a lot of evasion at that rate. So it's like the idea, so that's interesting. So the literal idea that the higher you make taxes and the more unreasonable you make them, the more people try to get out of them no matter what. So that's the second story. When did this come out? This came out 12/4/2026. I don't know if I want to keep on clicking. So Costco is joining other companies that aren't waiting to see whether the Supreme Court strikes on President Trump's most sweeping import taxes. They're going to demand refunds on the tariffs that they've paid. The specialized U.S. Court of International Trade in New York and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit in Washington ruled earlier this year that Trump's biggest and boldest import taxes are illegal. So that's good to understand. I'm gonna have to look up. So the Supreme Court is now before this in a November 5th hearing. Several of the High Court's justices expressed doubts that the president had sweeping power to declare national emergencies to slap tariffs on goods from almost every country on earth. If the court strikes down the tariffs, importers may be entitled to refunds on the levies they've paid. It's uncertain whether refunds will be granted. If so, how much, said Brent Skolrup, a legal fellow at the Libertarian Cato Institute. But the possibility has prompted many companies, including Costco, to file actions in the U.S. Court of International Trade to get in line, so to speak, for potential refunds. Trump claims that he has an almost unlimited right to impose tariffs, a power the Constitution gives to Congress under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, but is now lost twice in court. Trade lawyer Joyce Tutu, a partner at the Vinson and Elkins law firm, said that Costco is trying to make sure that if and when the Supreme Court overturns IEEPA tariffs, which could come as late as the summertime, so we're looking at possible resolution in, we'll say, July, June, or July. And so In the complaint filed last week with the trade court in New York, Costco has demanded the money back now to ensure its right to a complete refund is not jeopardized. The operator of the warehouse-sized store has expressed concern that it might struggle to get a refund once its tariff bills have been finalized, a process called liquidation by the Customs and Border Protection Agency, a process Costco says will start December 15th. Importers have 180 days after liquidation to protest the tariff bills. Costco worries that their timeline might be whittled away depending on how long it takes to get a Supreme Court decision. Revlon and canned food and chicken producer Bumblebee Foods have made similar arguments in the trade court. The tariffs faced in the court challenge have raised around $90 billion so far. It is unclear how a refund process would work. As import tax bills are finalized and sometimes appealed, Customs and Border Protection refunds tariffs every day, but not to this extent. This is a substantial amount of tariff income that has been collected, and there hasn't really been a case where there's been an influx of refund requests. Trump warned in August that the loss of his tariffs would destroy the American economy and lead to 1929 all over again. A Great Depression. Alright, so Costco sues Trump admin. So we learned a little bit. We're expecting the Supreme Court to make every other kind of decision. I feel like I should go back to the article. Okay, we're going back, all right? So, American importers and consumers bear nearly all the cost. The finding has profound implications. If foreign exporters do not reduce their prices in response to tariffs, then the entire burden of the tariff falls on U.S. buyers. The tariff functions not as a tax on foreign producers, but as a consumption tax on Americans. Every dollar of tariff revenue represents a dollar extracted from American businesses and households. Figure 1 illustrates the policy landscape. Effective tariff rates surged across trading partners following Liberation Day. China, already subject to elevated rates from the 2018-19 trade war, saw further increases. Brazil and India faced sharp, discrete tariff shocks in August 2025. Predictably, customs revenue surged, likely totaling around $280 billion more in 2025 than the previous year. Okay, so that's where I got that from. This revenue surge is the direct consequence of higher tariff rates applied to a shrinking volume of imports. Right? So, like, let's see. How much does the States import per year? You got fries? So we export about $3.2 trillion and we import around $4.1 trillion, which is a deficit of almost $1 trillion, $918 billion for the year. Total goods and services, blah, 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 blah. Is a trade deficit. Always negative. This is me going over it. Alright. Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. Alright. So we have to put these notes on. Let's see. Our trade good or bad? Okay, so let's see. So this is September 4th, 2025, so this is another recent document. There we go. The persistent U.S. trade deficit has long prompted concern, highlighted highlighted by recent tariff increases and broader debate about globalization. Some proponents of tariffs argue that they can shrink the deficit and bolster the economy. Two key questions subsequently arise. Are trade deficits inherently harmful? Can tariffs meaningfully reduce them? Typically, trade deficits are viewed through a lens of exports and imports, with the latter exceeding the former. While that is a useful exercise, it's also helpful to examine deficits through a macroeconomic lens. Drawn on that perspective, the difference between national savings and national investment closely approximates the trade deficit. We subsequently show that trade deficits can reflect strong investment or fiscal expansion funded via access to a global capital markets. Trade deficits facilitate higher investment than might otherwise occur or mitigate the cost to the private sector of fiscal expansion. Thus, they do not necessarily represent weakness, but rather a means for the economy to respond to the macroeconomic forces. While tariffs can influence trade flows, their net impact on overall trade balances is theoretically unclear and empirically limited at moderate tariff levels. Our analysis concludes by exploring the deeper structural forces behind the enduring trade deficit over the past half-century. To understand the trade balances from a macroeconomic standpoint, it's helpful to begin with national accounting identities that link domestic production, income, expenditures to international transactions, particularly trade. A central concept in this framework is national savings, defined as the sum of the private, household, and business savings and government saving. National investment represents the public and private spending that adds to the capital stock. Okay, so this is... This is all the math. Okay. I don't want to go to this. Trade can accommodate investment. I'm not even going to pretend like I understand these graphs I'm looking at right now. I actually don't want to. All right. Macroeconomic theory and data do not support the proposition that moderate tariffs can themselves reduce trade deficits. Tariffs certainly affect trade flows, but their net impact on trade balances is ambiguous and often offset by other factors. Many tariffs target intermediate goods, raising costs for domestic producers, right? We've seen this one. This supply-side contraction can diminish output, undermine export competitiveness, and at least partially offset the trade balance reduction from lower imports. Let's see. I think these guys were in North Carolina. Lumber. It was a lumber mill. I'm not listening to Bloomberg. Money-wise. North Carolina man who voted for Trump forced to shut lumber mill. Cut 50 jobs due to tariffs. What's next for rural America? Wilson Jones stands at what used to be a heart of his family's lumber empire, the McKay's Ferry Sawmill in North Carolina. But instead of familiar roars of saws cutting through the southern pine, there's only silence. I've grown all my life in the lumber business. The 60-something mill owner tells Bloomberg, his voice heavy with emotion. And to hear nature at a sawmill, I think for any lumberman is not natural. I don't want to be overly dramatic, but in a way, it is as unnerving as watching a loved one take their final breath. Damn, this man is dramatic as hell. Jones is the fifth generation in his family to run a lumber business, and the first to close the mill. The culprit? President Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, announced April 2nd, 2025, which promised to bring manufacturing jobs roaring back to America. When I say Liberation Day, I cannot put enough snark and sarcasm in my voice because we weren't liberated, Wilson says. Liberation Day it did at the time. It had damn near liberated me from our business. Which is absolutely crazy. Because the only problem that these guys have with the viewpoints of Donald Trump is that they believe that it would never impact them. So like now this guy's all dramatic, he has all this emotion in his voice because he thought all of the stuff that Donald Trump was talking about wouldn't never affect him. And now he's lost his job in the sawmill that was within 5 generations, right? That's at least, what? that's at least 100 years to 150 years of history that's now just evaporated because people thought that this guy was the business-minded president, right? This was, you bring business into government and you make it more efficient and everyone's able to make more money. This is like the biggest example of like how you really do need to be careful of like what you actually wish for, because Trump's adherence, the way he runs his business, is always to destroy as many like workers' lives so that he can just collect a little dollar, right? And these guys voted for it because they thought it wouldn't affect them. Like, people have known that Donald Trump's been a bad businessman. He was just all flash. I remember there was a thing that said like Donald Trump's like nest egg that he got from his dad, his inheritance. If he had just put that in the stock market, he would be even richer than he was before the second presidency started. I really want to know, how much has he made? Since his inauguration, Trump has reportedly gained $1.8 billion in cash and gifts by leveraging the presidency. Oh my God. And then if you add in the Trump and Media Technology Group, Truth Social, the crypto ventures, you could have it up to $3.4 billion. Like, I never want to hear anyone ever talk about these groups being the same. Like, it is so blatant, the grift, so blatant, the like the actual robbery. And not to like make it like this, but like, could you even imagine if Barack Hussein Obama was leveraging the presidency to make money? I can't even imagine the jokes. They're already, you know, calling him and his wife monkey and all that stuff. Like, imagine if these people were actually scamming the White House and using it to make billions of dollars while they're in office, right? When you're out of office, right, that's a different story. When you're in office, literally using this is crazy. All right, so let's see. The Jones family story isn't unique. It's playing out in factories, mills, and plants across America. Since President Trump's April tariff announcement, overall manufacturing employment has declined by 42,000, while job openings and hires have fallen by 76,000 and 18,000 respectively. Damn. According to the Center for American Progress, manufacturing hiring plunged in May to the weakest rate since 2016 under President Barack Obama. The situation hasn't improved in recent months. Manufacturing jobs are down $78,000 since the start of 2025, with the sector losing another 3,000 jobs in October alone, according to an ADP report. Despite job openings in the sector increasing to $462,000 in July, up from $393,000 in June, actual hiring has declined 5% year over year, according to ICIMS data. Time to fill has also increased from 40 to 42 days, suggesting employers are making slower, more cautious hiring decisions in an uncertain market. So again, right, you would consider the fact that Donald Trump is supposed to be a business-minded president, and the one thing that businesses need is stability and predictability in order to make decisions, and we have these people that don't consider that. That was very weird. To all the people not watching, I apologize for that. So, Wilson Jones sees a pattern clearly. If you put all these little communities together, from Maine over to Michigan, down to Mississippi and Alabama, it's having the same effect on these small little communities. The human cost is racking up. Of the 50 workers laid off when Mackey's Ferry closed, only 10 accepted positions at the Jonas Brothers' other mill an hour away. The rest, they're looking for new careers, new lives, or just trying to figure out what comes next. From the guy that's stacking lumber to the guy that's sawing, don't even care about the guy that's the mill owner. What about those guys? So, I don't feel bad for that man. That man thought that he would not be impacted by the dumbass ideas of Donald Trump. Okay. So again, final goods and capital equipment purchases. I've seen some stories where people talk about how it's like now double the price. Exchange rates. These mechanisms often operate in opposite directions, largely neutralizing one another. Moreover, as emphasized in recent research, the broader macroeconomic impact of tariffs depends on two critical assumptions: how governments use tariff revenues, whether to cut taxes, increase spending, or save, whether tariffs distort relative prices or trigger foreign retaliation, which can erode potential terms of trade gains. So again, right, China has a trade surplus this year, even though we expected that these tariffs would somehow change the reality. But China makes everything, so there's no other places to replace, I guess, from China. And these people did not really think out their next sections, right? Donald Trump's obsession with China since the 80s because of goddamn Lou Dobbs and Ray Cohn. Like, it's just crazy to see how some of these things are going on and happening. And who leads to what, and what kind of viewpoints and beliefs. It's been like 46 years, right? If we're going from 1980, right? Whatever. And Donald Trump has had the same ideas, and now we have all this data to show that his ideas have been stupid for almost 50 years. The U.S. has run persistent trade deficits since the mid-1970s. Rather than driven by trade policies, these deficits largely stem from three deeper macroeconomic and structural forces. First, the U.S. has consistently outperformed its peers. Between 1992 and 2022, the U.S. real GDP grew at an average of annual rate of 2.45% in 2010 purchasing power parity adjusted dollars, more than the 0.99% rate of the G7 countries. So literally almost 2.5% compared to our other peers, plus Spain. Productivity growth similarly outpaced peers, 1.05% compared with 0.55%, reinforcing the U.S. appeal to global investors. Second, the global savings glut, driven by high savings rates in China and other transition economies since the fall of the Berlin Wall in the 1990s, played a major role. Demographic shifts, including aging population and shrinking workforces since the 1910s, further intensified global saving and pushed down interest rates, enabling greater U.S. borrowing and widening the trade deficit. Third, the U.S. dollar's dominant reserve currency role ensures the persistent demand for safe dollar-dominated assets, especially during global crises such as the 2008-2009 financial crisis or the pandemic. This demand supports capital inflows, strengthens the dollar, and makes the U.S. exports less competitive and imports cheaper. Together, they reinforce the trade deficit in line with the Triffin dilemma. Supplying the world's reserve currency entails persistent external deficits. Okay, so this is from the Dallas Fed, right? Where the United States has been doing better than our peers, right? And if you keep on going, because we are the reserve currency, it literally, let me see, external deficits are kind of what is going to happen when you have the reserve currency. It makes your imports cheaper. Okay. So we have the Dallas Fed. Okay. Trade deficits are not inherently bad. They reflect foreign capital inflows, so we are a place where people like to place capital and invest, and can support domestic investment or fiscal expansion. In a financially open economy, they enable greater flexibility to absorb domestic and global shocks without interest rate increases. Also, tariffs are a blunt instrument. Theory reveals offsetting effects, and empirical studies show that tariffs, especially at moderate levels, do not meaningfully reduce trade deficits. Furthermore, tariff actions can also heighten uncertainty and hurt growth. So, okay. Finally, structural forces drive persistent U.S. trade deficits. Strong relative growth, global saving dynamics, increased financial capital mobility, and the dollar's reserve currency status underpin U.S. trade deficits. Addressing them, if appropriate, likely requires broad macroeconomic tools rather than trade policy. These takeaways from a macroeconomic perspective suggest that focusing on reducing trade deficits per se, and with tariffs, could be counterproductive. That said, there's one caveat. Deficits accumulated over time lead to more IOUs and growing external liabilities. Eventually, these IOUs must be repaid. In the examples presented here, the economy is better off even when the nation repays the IOUs. However, if deficits stem from poor policy choices, they can ultimately leave the country worse off. Yeah, so if you have the world's reserve currency and you institute a blunt instrument instead of like actual fine reasoning and policies, into you're going to ruin your country's growth. Let's see. Why did I close that? I'm gonna take down, right? So Dallas Federal Reserve. Okay. Can reflect foreign capital inflows. Can support domestic let's see. How did the U.S. versus other countries rebound from COVID? All right, let's see if they make me pay something. So this is from the Brookings Institute. Big words. I just want like a quick one. Okay, U.S. economic recovery fastest among comparable advanced economies. So we had a 1.4% shortfall in our real GDP versus the lowest, United Kingdom, 6.8. Despite higher growth, U.S. core inflation, so not only did we have a lower GDP, real GDP shortfall, but also, despite our growth, our inflation was lower than other economies. The recovery has been exceptionally strong. All right. So I'm just going to put that there. All right. So strong growth, which we had, global saving, and dollars reserve currency status underpin U.S. trade needs precise tools rather than blunt tariff policy to fix. Stong. Okay, and then lastly for this article, before we go back to the original, reducing trade deficits and with tariffs is counterproductive, according to these individuals. Dallas Fed. Okay. So as we go, okay, the question of tariff incidents is not new. During the 2018 to 2019 U.S. trade war, a substantial body of research emerged to document who bore the cost of those tariffs. The consensus was striking. U.S. import prices rose nearly 1-for-1 with tariffs, while Chinese export prices largely remained unchanged. So, let's see. This is our America's own goal. These are our notes on that, right? So, China trade. So, China trade war, right? U.S. import prices rose. Chinese export prices stayed the same. So this is just showing Donald Trump's just the mad king, able to just make any stupid declaration, and people don't take him seriously, and they don't adjust their practices fully based off like what this guy wants, which is so sad. That he's just been obsessed with people laughing at him. Like, he has to present like this big, strong guy that everyone has to take seriously, and it just makes people take him less serious. Okay. Studies using detailed product level data found pass-through rates close to 100%, meaning that American buyers paid essentially the full amount of the tariff. Chinese exporters, despite facing significant new trade barriers, did not cut their dollar prices to maintain market share. Instead, the primary adjustment occurred through the reduced trade volumes. Fewer Chinese goods entered the United States, but those that did were not discounted. Okay. This finding was initially surprising to some observers. Standard economic models suggest that an incidence of a tariff depends on the relative elasticities of supply and demand. If foreign exporters face highly elastic demand, meaning buyers can easily switch to alternatives, they might be expected to absorb part of the tariff to remain competitive. But the 2018-2019 evidence suggests otherwise. Several explanations emerged. First, for many products, there were no close substitutes readily available from non-tariff sources. Second, Chinese exporters may have faced capacity constraints that limited their ability to redirect sales elsewhere. Third, and perhaps more importantly, the structure of global supply chains meant that U.S. importers had already optimized their sources and could not easily switch suppliers in the short run. The 2025 tariffs provide an opportunity to test whether these patterns hold at a much larger scale. Liberation Day tariffs were broader in scope, higher in magnitude, and applied to a wider range of trading partners. Our findings confirm the same dynamics apply, near complete pass-through to U.S. buyers. Damn. So literally tariffs did everything. So validation. Brazil and India case studies. Our baseline estimates the capture effect of tariffs across all products and countries, but averages can mask important heterogeneity, and identification relies on the assumption that tariff changes are not correlated with other factors affecting prices. To address these concerns, we conduct event studies around discrete, well-identified tariff shocks. Okay, so we're going down. August 6, 2025, the U.S. imposed a 50% tariff on imports from Brazil. This was a sudden and substantial increase affecting a wide range of products. We estimate the dynamic effect of this tariff using the Sun and Abram interaction weighted estimator, which addresses potential biases from staggered treatment, timing, and heterogeneous treatment effects. Okay. Secondly, and most importantly, the post-treatment coefficients remain close to zero and statistically insignificant. Following the imposition of 50% tariff, Brazilian exporters did not substantially reduce their dollar prices. The estimated coefficients hover around zero, with confidence intervals that exclude economically meaningful price reductions. This finding confirms that baseline results in the cleaner setting. Brazilian exporters did not eat the tariff. The burden of the 50% tariff was passed through nearly in full to U.S. importers. Okay. Why don't exporters absorb the tariffs? A natural question arises. Why don't foreign exporters cut their prices to maintain access to lucrative U.S. markets? Several factors help explain this pattern. Why don't exporters absorb I don't know why I capitalized that. All right. The United States is a large market, but it is not the only market. Exporters facing U.S. tariffs can redirect their sales to Europe, Asia, or other destinations. If redirecting sales is feasible, exporters have less incentive to cut prices specifically for U.S. buyers. The Indian export data confirms this. Indian exporters maintain their prices across all destinations, suggesting that they are able to find alternative buyers for goods no longer competitive in the United States. So, U.S. is not the only buyer. Countries found alternative markets when tariffs made exporting goods to U.S. less lucrative. So, one other point is that this is an example now. There was a deal, the U.S. Mercosur deal. Hold on. Sorry, EU Mercosur deal, right? So this took 25 years for them to negotiate, but main part is, if I can get a map of this to show people. No one's gonna watch this, but whatever. All right. So we'll just look at that, right? This specific deal is between, it's 700 million people. It represents 20% of the world's GDP, right? Donald Trump is currently threatened to tariff 50% Brazil, 10% on all EU countries, and now he's saying that he will tack on an extra 10% if they don't allow him to buy or seize Greenland. These people do not really need us if that's the case. They'll gladly sell in dollars and hold our debt, which they can't sell unless they want to destroy their own economies, but they do not have to be strangled or held hostage by our whimsical ideas about who has to pay what and what country has what kind of tariff percentage, because it just turns out no matter what, the cost of every single tariff just goes to the consumer. So Donald Trump just keeps charges a regressive tax, which other countries are literally just going to avoid. But we can't, because we don't have the domestic capabilities right now, since they've degraded and they've been sold elsewhere, to replace what is happening when it comes to global trade, right? So this deal is just between the EU and these four countries. It's Brazil, let me not get this wrong, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay and Uruguay. Yeah. So these people, massive populations, right? This is just an example. People will find other alternatives to the United States if our places are not lucrative or attractive as they should be. And they'll gladly do that. They don't have to deal with us no more. Ugh. All right. Cutting prices may not help. So even if an exporter cuts prices, a 50% tariff is extremely difficult to overcome through price concessions. An exporter would need to cut their price by 1/3 just to offset a 50% tariff, a margin cut that would likely be unprofitable for most firms. Given the choice between maintaining margins on reduced sales or slashing margins to maintain volume, most exporters, definitely prefer the former. So, tariff is too high to allow lower prices and profitability. All right, expectations matter. exporters believe tariffs may be temporary or subject to negotiation, they have less incentive to make costly price adjustments. Cutting prices in response to tariffs could set a precedent that invites further tariff increases in the future. So literally, companies do not believe these tariffs are permanent. I can't talk, whatever, permanent. All right. So literally, tariffs are a tax. Taxation is the realm of Congress, not president. Literally demonstrates that these companies believe and know the law. Do not expect the Supreme Court to fundamentally change. Let's see. Checks and balance system of U.S. government. Let's see. Game of chicken. Lowering prices may encourage further tariffs if a whimsical Prezi gets mad. All right. Supply chains are sticky. Many U.S. importers have long-standing relationships with foreign suppliers and cannot easily switch to alternative sources. This gives existing suppliers pricing power. They know that the U.S. customers cannot immediately replace them, so they face less competition pressure to cut prices. Global supply chains are optimized for fluctuation and not easily changed or shifted. So like the example of this is like I guess Vietnam, and how that is, I think, a Vietnam and India, but I don't know so much about India with Donald Trump continually trying to irritate them to replace China as an exporter. But as it stands right now, everything's the same. So who bears the ultimate burden? Importers and wholesalers face the immediate. They must pay the tariff at the border, which appears as a higher cost of goods on their books. They have a choice: absorb the cost through reduced margins or pass it on to their customers. They pass it on. Manufacturers and retailers who purchase imported inputs or finished goods face the next stage of the burden. If their suppliers pass through the tariff, they face the same choice: absorb or pass through. Evidence from 2018 to 2019 tariffs suggests that most firms pass through cost increases to customers, although there is heterogeneity dependent on market structure and competition. Consumers are the ultimate bearers of this burden. Consumers in the end. All right, and as we go, importers, sailors, manufacturers, and retailers pass costs through to consumers. Alrighty, so let's see. Policy implications. First, tariffs are a tax on Americans. The claim that foreign countries pay for U.S. tariffs is empirically false. With approximately 96% pass-through, nearly all the tariff burden falls on American importers and ultimately consumers. The $200 billion surge in customs revenue represents $200 billion extracted from American businesses and households. Secondly, tariffs do not transfer wealth from foreigners to Americans. They transfer wealth from American consumers to the U.S. Treasury. Alright, let's see. In the end. Let's see. Tariffs are a tax on Americans. Right? Transfers American wealth to the from the people to the U.S. Treasury. This is economically equivalent to a consumption tax, but one that applies selectively to imported goods, creating additional distortions and inefficiencies. Third, trade volumes adjust, not prices. The primary effect of tariffs is to reduce imports, not to force foreign producers to accept lower prices. This means fewer goods, less variety, and disrupted supply chains for American firms. The costs are real and immediate. The purported benefits are illusionary. You're hallucinating. There's no benefits. Let's see. Trade volumes decrease, not prices. Supply chains bear significant costs. American manufacturers that rely on imported inputs face higher costs. They must either absorb these costs or scramble to find alternative sources. None of these options is costless. So, manufacturer in U.S. face increased costs. So the exact opposite of what the Trump administration really wants to do. They want to lower the cost of what it takes to manufacture stuff in the United States, but the tariffs are increasing the cost. Stupid. Fifth, the 2025 tariffs repeat the mistakes of 2018-2019. So, lessons not learned from Trump 1. That's great. So I'm gonna just read the last paragraph just to end this off. It's 3 hours learning that tariffs are stupid and we're just creating new ways for Wall Street to make money. So the policy implications are stark. The 2025 tariffs function as a consumption tax on American businesses and households. The $200 billion in additional customs revenue represents wealth transferred from Americans to the U.S. Treasury, not from foreign producers. The claim that foreign countries pay these tariffs is a myth. The tariffs are, in the most literal sense, an own goal. Americans are footing the bill. So, alrighty. So how do we roll it up? Oh, well, we already have that rolled up. Lou Dobbs has destroyed us. All right. So that was an interesting article. All right, I need to get rid of this. I'm gonna go over this later. I don't want to go over that right now. I've been here too long. Alrighty. So, I guess that is my analysis for today. That took a little bit, right? Going over these tariffs. We won't have a Supreme Court, I guess, decision on tariffs until the summer. But until then, companies are selling. They're selling their refund claim for pennies or dimes, quarters of on the dollar or whatever. Because these companies don't expect us to absolutely nuke our own economic prospects to make Donald Trump feel happy. Ideas that Donald Trump has had since the goddamn 80s because of Lou Dobbs of all people. Let me look up Lou Dobbs' ugly face again. Like, there's just so many people that... Oh my God. He's a Republican, and then he became an independent. It's just so great that our bad ideas just keep replicated, and they keep on going. So, that was an interesting article. America's Own Goal, Who Pays the Tariffs? Just the fact that when it comes down to it, they've studied this since 2018, right? During Donald Trump's first term, right? 2016 and 2020, where he proceeded to start a trade war with China that did not actually solve any of the issues that he said were going to be solved, right? Now, he's a blunt instrument, and he doesn't understand the finesse that you have to have when it comes to these very, very fragile, very, very critical, and very, very already optimized, like, global trade networks. The fact that he has no one around him to basically be like, this is not the way to do it, and all the, like, stupid stuff that they're trying to do in order to change the way that the dollar's kind of perceived, when it comes to as the reserve currency. Like, they want the dollar to remain the reserve currency, but they also want to devalue the dollar at the same time. And it's just trying to do so many unforced errors and just an own goal. It's just so stupid. But I guess I'm doing a little too much silence. So let's go through this, right? So Trump has declared, so main takeaway, financial services companies believe that Trump's use of the IEEPA is unconstitutional and a violation of separate powers. Congress is the only entity that can levy taxes. Tariff is a consumption tax. So other main takeaway, right? Tariffs used in order to reduce trade deficits does not work. In fact, tariffs only increase the taxes on everyday American citizens. And encourage our trade partners to find other markets. Let's see. Additionally, they can impact American manufacturing companies, reduce our ability to absorb domestic and foreign trade, we'll say trade or financial shocks. What's the other way? Tariffs would to be around 60% in order to replace income taxes, which would be devastating to middle, lower, and fixed income all right. Well, that's my first one. So, 3 hours. Not too bad. We're going to see how this goes. I'm going to do a couple things. But, so who pays the tariff? Americans pay the tariff, and everything behind it is stupid. That's basically how we gotta think about it. So, that's it. Goodbye. I guess there's nothing else. Conclusion.